Someone in your life has said it to you. A parent, an uncle at Christmas, a mortgage broker on the phone. Renting is dead money. Said like it's a law of physics, not an opinion. Like every dollar you hand a landlord just evaporates, while every dollar you hand a bank somehow doesn't. Quick note before we go further. This is general information to help you understand the actual numbers behind renting versus buying, not personal financial advice. Everyone's city, income and deposit are different, and this video isn't telling you which one to choose. It's just showing you the maths that dead money conveniently leaves out. Because when you actually run the numbers on a real Australian city with a real deposit, dead money isn't always the word for it. Sometimes it's the buyer's money doing the disappearing act instead. Before this goes further, a few things this isn't. It's not a video telling you to never buy a house. It's not saying home ownership is a scam or that your parents were wrong to buy theirs. Owning a home you love with stability you can't put a price on is a completely valid reason to buy. This video just isn't about that reason. It's about the purely financial version of the argument, the one that gets thrown around as if it's settled maths, when almost nobody's actually run the numbers. Jess and Dave are both 29, both earning about the same, and both have saved exactly the same deposit, $140,000, sitting in the bank, eyeing off the same $700,000 apartment. Dave does what everyone told him to do. He puts the full $140,000 down, pays roughly $28,000 in stamp duty on top, takes out a $560,000 mortgage at around 6.2% and moves in. Jess does something that sounds, on paper, like she's throwing money away. She keeps renting the same style of apartment for around $550 a week and takes her entire $140,000 deposit, plus the $28,000 she never had to pay in stamp duty, and puts it straight into a low-cost index fund instead. Here's the part the dead money line skips completely. Dave's mortgage, rates, insurance, and upkeep on that apartment come to something like $55,800 a year. Jess's rent on the equivalent place comes to about $28,600. That's not a rounding error. That's roughly $27,000 a year that Dave is spending, and Jess isn't. Jess doesn't just save that gap. Every single year, she takes it and adds it to the same index fund her deposit is already sitting in. So while Dave's $168,000 of stamp duty and deposit is locked inside a mortgage, Jess's $168,000 deposit plus the stamp duty she skipped is out in the market from day one, and it keeps getting topped up every year with the cash Dave's spending on ownership costs that Jess simply isn't. Run that forward 10 years using a fairly standard planning assumption. The property growing at around 3.5% a year, Jess's investments growing at around 7%, roughly the long-run number people plan around, never a guarantee. Dave's apartment is now worth somewhere around $987,000. But once you subtract what's left on his loan and the costs of eventually selling, his actual net wealth from that apartment sits at roughly $495,000. Jess's index fund, the deposit, the stamp duty, and 10 years of that $27,000 annual gap, compounding the whole way, has grown to somewhere around $642,000. Same starting deposit, same income. 10 years later, Jess is roughly $147,000 ahead for having wasted money on rent the entire time. Here's the catch, and it's an important one. This result is not a law of nature. It's one worked example, and it moves when the assumptions move. If property prices in that same scenario grow at 5% a year instead of 3.5%, the leverage in Dave's mortgage starts working harder and buying edges back in front narrowly. change the city, the deposit size, the interest rate, or how disciplined Jess actually is about investing that gap instead of spending it on a nicer holiday, and the number moves again. That last point matters most. The maths only works if the gap actually gets invested every year on purpose. The real risk to Jess's plan was never renting itself. It's what happens if that $27,000 quietly turns into takeaway and forgotten subscriptions instead of an index fund. So renting is dead money isn't a lie exactly. It's just an incomplete sentence. The real line is closer to, renting is dead money if you don't do anything with what you saved by not buying. Renting while you deliberately invest the gap is a completely different financial decision, and depending on your city and your numbers, it can leave you further ahead, not behind. Your homework isn't to cancel a house inspection tonight. It's to actually run your own numbers, your city's rent, your city's typical mortgage, your own deposit, instead of repeating a sentence you heard at Christmas. And if renting stays the right call for now, make sure the money you're saving is actually going somewhere, not just sitting there feeling responsible. Make sure you subscribe and let's get sorted.